Okay, good morning, everybody. But before we start, I want you to sing this. This is the background music for the next song I'm going to play. It goes like this. Okay? No matter where you are, I'm going to give you the signal. You sing it. You're my background singers for this song. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. There you go. That song is called The Odd Couple. And I had a request to do this, and I'm honoring this request. This is for Monica D. Brint. So there you go, kid. You requested it, and you got it. Now, where the hell do you go on the internet or on TV? And you're going to see an interview show about a very interesting subject, abusive and a bit morbid. And a guy comes on who's going to do the interviewing and plays a song that is in a lot of people's memories. I think it was in the 70s. This show was on television, The Odd Couple, before the show starts. Well, I'll tell you where you go. You come right here to Life After Scientology, and I'm Ron Miscavige, and I welcome you to this episode. And as promised, we got Mike Rinder back this morning so he can finish his story, and it was a fascinating story so far. And you're not going to be disappointed, and you're going to get enlightened as to how somebody can rise to the top in that church, in that cult. I apologize for using that word. And then be treated the way he was treated. So without any further words, let me put my horn away first. Please welcome my dear friend and an old friend, Mike Rinder. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Ronnie. The other half of The Odd Couple.
I know. I thought about that before I arrived at the studio today. I think, Jesus Christ, this is appropriate, you know?
Now, I'm not sure that we're the odd couple. Why aren't we like the normal couple?
You know what? You just made a point. You made my day. Because I was worried about that. I was trying to think which one of us was the very orderly person and the other one was kind of sloppy. Okay, I'll be the orderly person. How about you?
Well, yeah. You can be the odd person.
Okay, good. All right. So listen, just because we're taking up a morbid subject doesn't mean that we have to be, as they say, downtone or downbeat, I guess. You can still enjoy your life. And I'll tell you one of the things you can do. You're going to watch the show. You're going to get enlightened, and you're going to see the abuses that the Church of Scientology does. Now, you can change yourself to a participant in one swoop, become a patron. And with those words, I would like to announce some of the patrons that we've had this week. So, Brian Wright, $1. Thank you very much, Brian. And Crystalini Mancy. It's a great name, by the way. $1, and I thank you very much, too. And then Shelley Basbichel. I hope I didn't murder that name. Shalina Basbichel for $2. Thank you very much. And then one name, Scarlett, $20. Very much appreciated, Scarlett. And you out there listening, if you want to change from being a viewer or just watching this for your own edification or enlightenment, that's fine. You can become a participant and help in this endeavor just by becoming a patron. Go to Patreon and you can see how to do this. You can donate so much money each month, anywhere from, a couple bucks to 100, whatever you'd like to do. But it's all appreciated, okay? Anyway, without any further words, let's get over to Mike, and I want to take over. I'm going to start where we left off the last interview. And basically, it was after you met David, and we went into that a bit. Do you remember that, Mike?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if there's anything further you'd like to say on it, you can. Otherwise, I would like to know how you rose to the top, because you went from when you first got in and were on the Apollo to being assigned to be a deckhands, which you weren't too happy with that assignment, as I recall. go from that into the international spokesman and the head of OSA. That's quite an achievement, no matter how you want to look at it. So why don't we start wherever you want to, but let's get into that right now.
Okay, well, my tenure on the Apollo, I think that we talked last week about, I was a deckhand, but then because I was sort of expendable, I went off to Madeira for that whole episode. And then when I came back, I became what I was assigned to the job of the commanding officer of the Flag Bureau Communicator.
Right.
Shortened as COFB-COM. And the commanding officer at that time was Kerry Gleason. And that started giving me a lot of experience. And by the way, Ronnie, that's when I first met Dave Richards. Because at the time, Dave Richards was the disseminated Flag Bureau. So that's the start of my friendship with Dave was in 1974, late 1974, when I became the COFB-COM.
Wow. By the way, just for our viewers, Dave Richards was a dear friend of both Mike's and mine, and Dave died last October. Very, very sad thing. It just was, he had an accident and ended up with I guess a brain concussion, and he died from it overnight. It was terrible. But a dear friend to lose, and just to tell you who that was. And I knew him for all those years, and we always got along well. And I think same with you, Mike. Did you ever have a falling out with him?
Never. Just the nicest guy in the entire world.
Yeah.
I adored Dave, and so did everybody else that knew him well. Christy loved Dave. And there's a whole interesting connection with Christy and Dave's family and Dave's daughter and blah, 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 but I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah. Okay,
let's get back to, I'll try and keep this abbreviated because I know I ramble a lot, so you got to sort of bear with me.
Well, okay, but no more saying you ramble, because I'm going to tell you something. People watch this show to hear you, as you say, ramble, but I say you enlighten people in a way that they know you're not giving them bullshit. You're giving them the straight skinny. Okay, so no more of that.
Yes, sir. I'm suitably chagrined.
Okay, all right, there you go.
Okay, so when I remained the COFB-COM for quite some time, and I learned a lot about Hubbard management and interacted with a lot of management functions, et cetera, et cetera. And then when the Apollo came ashore in Daytona, I was sent on a project mission from Daytona to Clearwater and was actually one of the very first people that went to the Fort Harrison when it was still operating as a hotel. And wow. I was there to handle the telexes and the mail that was to come back and forth between Daytona, where Hubbard was, and ultimately the Fort Harrison. So I had to set up the telex lines, set up the mail lines that used to go. They went by Greyhound bus and whatever. That was a little period of time, and I subsequently went back once everybody had moved and everything was set up. I went back and I became back to being Kerry Gleason's communicator. And then he appointed me as the supercargo of the Flag Bureau. And the supercargo is just an odd naval sort of term for the person who's over personnel and various other things. But I went away on a mission to Buffalo and Chicago. And when I got back, L. Ron Hubbard, there had been some big problem in external comm, the area that handles all the telexes and mail and freight. And they were hugely backlogged because all telexes at that time were coded, and they had to be decoded by hand.
Oh, boy.
And this telex office was, and that's where I met Dave. I told you I was the external comm. This telex office was piled up with all these telexes that were coming in that were supposedly incredibly urgent, and they weren't being decrypted, so nobody could read them. So it was a big flap. So Hubbard says, okay, put Rinder back and make him the external command and tell him to sort it out. So I went in and with Foster Tompkins, who was my deputy, straightened out external comm to the point where we got this special I got a special commendation from L. Ron Hubbard of I had brought an area out of a state of emergency, and basically I was like a kakan.
Wow.
So from there,
Wait, Mike, explain what a kakan is, because there may be some people who don't know what this is.
Yeah. It's a term that is used to describe someone who literally has 9 lives. They can commit murder 9 times and not be rebuked or disciplined for it.
Okay.
It's just another one of these crazy things in Scientology that sounds so bizarre, and it just kind of falls out of my mouth like it's perfectly normal.
I know. Listen, I know that, and I'll tell you
it's
this.
hard when I'm talking to you because we talk the language, and it's hard to remember that. Oh, wait a minute! Probably most people aren't going to get this shit at all.
I know what you mean. And let me tell you something. No matter if you were a kakan or not, if they've got pissed off at you, it didn't matter, man. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so from there, I then sort of became the chief officer of the Flag Bureau, which was over all of the management. And then I became what was called the deputy staff captain, and was like at that time, the senior most level of Scientology management was sort of the Commodore's staff captain and his aides. And, this is all a bit esoteric. It's not really making much point, but from there, at the time, actually, future daughter-in-law, Biddy, recruited me to join the Commodore's Messenger Org.
I got it.
And the Commodore's Messenger Org had an outpost in Clearwater, although most of the messengers were with Hubbard, who had now moved from Daytona. He then went to Dunedin and lived there for a while. He then went to Washington, D.C. and lived there for a while. And then he went to Los Angeles and ultimately to La Quinta, which is near Palm Springs in California.
Right.
I joined the CMO and was then sent by Annie Broker, was sent to La Quinta to train to be a Commodore's messenger, a watch messenger. And I think I described that to you last week. A watch messenger is someone that actually worked with L. Ron Hubbard in his presence, doing his dirty work right there and then.
Right.
I subsequently returned to Clearwater and became the head of the CMO in Clearwater. And then there is an interesting interaction that occurred with Dave subsequent to that, because in 1979, I went to the international base, which now had actually relocated to Hammett. It had just relocated to Hammett.
Right. Which
is now where Golden Era Productions is. And were with Biddy and Ronnie, your son, and another woman called Barbara Saker, we became the 4 people who were the pilot people for the Key to Life. When the Key to Life was being piloted, we were the first 4 people to do it. Wow. And the first 4 people on Earth to complete the Key to Life. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, Ronnie, but the Key to Life has this whole rigmarole that goes along with it. Hubbard said, the chicken and the egg theory. You can't have someone that hasn't done the Key to Life teach the Key to Life. You can't have someone that hasn't done the Key to Life export it. And so the idea was export was now going to happen to Flag.
Right.
And so missions had to be run. So people had to be put through the course and then sent on the mission. But even the person who ran the mission had to be a Key to Life graduate. Dave, at that time, was the action chief, CMO Int. Mm-hmm. And he was the person in charge of running what's called Sea Org missions all over the world. He had not done the Key to Life, so he could not run that mission. And neither had anybody else. So I got seconded into the Action Bureau CMON under Dave to run the mission to export Key to Life to Flag and LA. Ultimately, funnily enough, and that's where I really got to know him pretty well, because we worked together like day and night for months in the same little office. And ultimately, we got ComEv'd, both him and me together, by David Mayo, the senior CS International, which is one of the reasons why Dave never forgave David Mayo.
Wow.
And the ComEv was for messing up the export of the Key to Life somehow, because we used the wrong something, or I don't even remember what all the details were, but it was complete lunacy. It was one of these total, you know, in the Sea Org, you get many things that happen that are just cover your ass.
Oh, of course.
Someone does something and issues a ComEv because they're in that position of authority in order to point the finger at someone else, and it's just craziness. There's no sense to it whatsoever.
Listen, you saying that, it just reminds me of That's How Life was there. That wasn't unusual. That's the way it was.
Exactly. It's like a lunatic asylum. Okay, so.
Excuse me. I hate to correct you. It's not like a lunatic asylum. It is a lunatic asylum. So continue.
Right. Okay. So subsequent to that whole incident, I went back to Clearwater, and I was there running the CMO. And basically that meant I was in charge of Flag. I was the most senior person at the Flag land base. And and my staff included Ronnie and Biddy and a whole lot of other people that are like old friends of yours and mine who we've known forever.
Wow.
But because of that experience that I had in the Action Bureau with Dave, in 1981, in April, there was a big flap. Actually, earlier in 1981, there was a big flap where someone in the Guardian's office in Los Angeles had accepted service of a subpoena on behalf of L. Ron Hubbard. Now, accepting service of a subpoena for someone in a corporate position is a very normal thing. It's not unusual. But when Hubbard found out about it, he hit the roof. In fact, he disappeared from where he was and went off into hiding. And he sent instructions to the CMO to investigate the Guardian's office for having accepted this service. So a mission was sent to the Guardian's office worldwide in England, right, that consisted of Terry Gamboa and Norman Starkey to go do an observation of what happened. That observation mission came back, and there was then subsequently what's called a sit handling mission, which means to now go handle the situation that had been uncovered by their observation. That sit handling mission consisted of myself, Jana Adair Swanson, Mark Yeager, Mike Eldridge, and one other person who I can't remember. And we went to the Guardian's office worldwide as really the first Sea Org incursion into the operations of the Guardian's office ever. This was something from outside of the Guardian's office was now coming in to do something and straighten them out.
And that was never done before, as far as
ever. No, it wasn't even contemplated.
Right.
It was like, nope, this is the realm of Mary Sue Hubbard. Nobody goes near it, blah, 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 blah. Hubbard had written to Mary Sue and told her, cooperate.
Yeah.
He not very willingly gave basically authorization for this mission to go to the Guardian's office worldwide office, because the Guardian's office of the United States had messed up so badly that she was in no position to argue.
I got it.
Okay. That subsequently led to me doing a series of missions and ultimately the takeover and the disbandment of the Guardian's office. As a result of doing those missions, I got very experienced in the world of the Guardian's office, and this was before the Office of Special Affairs was created, but the CMO had basically taken over the Guardian's office under the direction of Dave, Terry Gamboa, and Norman Starkey. They were called Special Project.
Right.
And that was operating in Los Angeles and now taking control of the Guardian's office organizations around the world. At some point, and I'm not going to get too complicated about this, but at some point, I then returned. By that time, I was now considered to be a CMO international staff member. There was all sorts of things that were going on during this period, 1981, 1982, 1983, the mission holders mutiny and the mission holders massacre. All of that was all going on, and I was brought back to Hemet and assigned the post of Chief Officer CMO International.
I got it.
And from there, I went to the RPF.
You're joking.
No, I went to the RPF very shortly thereafter for, quote, falsifying stats, which was actually, believe it or not, that at the time it was the start of INCOM, the Scientology computer system.
Yeah.
And that was such a mess. And Hubbard was being relayed stats by INCOM. And I don't even know how it was being done, but it was being sent to his remote location. And so he was getting stats directly on some form of computer there. And we were getting stats from INCOM at CMO International. And we were having to do what's called a stat analysis every week.
Right.
We had to review all the stats and then write this report to Hubbard. And then he'd send all these orders about what was supposed to be done.
Right.
Okay. My stat report about the statistics said that one of the C organization, AOLA, one of the C organizations, had their paid completions going up and that they were in affluence. Hubbard's graph had them going down. I said the statistics were in affluence, and he wrote back a thing saying I was fucking nuts and that I had Eve perps and that I was to be sent to the RPF.
Wow.
In fact, what had happened is INCOM had corrected the stats on his computer and not on ours.
Wow.
Whatever. So I went to the RPF.
This is normal cover your ass stuff. Let's face it.
Exactly.
Why am I surprised?
Nobody ever fessed up to that. It was just, okay, well, nobody's going to go back to Hubbard and say, oh, well, actually, it wasn't really him, sir. INCOM screwed it up, blah, 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 blah. No, nobody's going to stick their neck out like that. So I went to the RPF.
There you go.
Okay. So shortly thereafter, I was in the RPF for a while, and I didn't actually mind the RPF. After the stresses of being at CMO International on the management lines, the RPF was kind of easy. Seriously.
I believe you.
It was like, it was working, renovating the Blue Complex building, the Big Blue.
Yep.
And not sleeping for literally days on end, Ronnie. Days. Like, I fell asleep standing up with a paint roller against the wall.
Good
like
Lord.
Several times. Just like propped up by the paint roller. Or sleeping on the concrete floor for 30 minutes after being up for 24 hours to like get going again. But that wasn't so bad compared to some of the stresses of being on these lines directly with Hubbard. It was like very stressful.
Oh, I'll bet. I'll bet. I'll tell you something. You're right on this covering your own ass. That was standard operation with the international people. It was standard.
People are so good at it. They are so sneaky and so clever. Like the former CEO of Gold, Lisa Schroer, always comes to mind when I think of someone who could cover their ass with oh my God, no, I had no idea this was going on.
Right.
Right after she just ordered it.
Of course.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And it's a skill that you develop as a Sea Org executive. It really is.
Well, actually, it's a survival skill in that situation.
Of course it is. In any event, I know I go off on all these tangents because there's so many things, but so I'm in the RPF, and then one of my old juniors in CMOCW was Vicky Azaran. And Vicky Azaran ultimately became pretty famous or infamous, whichever way you want, because she ultimately became the Inspector General of RTC. And that's a whole nother story in itself. But at this time, RTC had just been formed, and it was being run by Annie Broker and sort of completely independent from the rest of anything happening in Scientology. And Vicky was the person who was in charge of it.
Right.
And Vicky, then there was a whole lawsuit with Jerry Armstrong. And they wanted to get the files computerized from that lawsuit. And there was nobody to do it. So Vicky picked a bunch of people out of the RPF in Los Angeles and reprieved them. And it was me and a few other people, including some of the former CMOCW people that were buddies, Rosie Kamen and Rick Kamen and a few other people. And we created this little unit. And though we had this sort of weird status, not really in the RPF, but not actually in the RPF, we just input all these computer files. And pretty soon, this became the most successful operation of computerizing that anybody had ever seen. So it got expanded. And at that point, I then got taken out of there and got put into the legal bureau of the newly formed Office of Special Affairs International.
Wow.
And the first thing that I did in the legal bureau was I had to do an evaluation about the situation in Portugal. And I then went to Portugal and sued the Portuguese government for discrimination against Scientology for throwing the Apollo out of Portugal. And we won.
And we won.
Yeah. I was over there all by myself in Lisbon filing a lawsuit against the Portuguese government, and we won.
That's wonderful. That's very
that significant. But that sort of started my real career in the Office of Special Affairs. And from there, I got appointed to be the head of the Office of Special Affairs of the United States. And then I became the head of the Office of Special Affairs International. And then I became the Watchdog Committee member over the Office of Special Affairs. And in between these various stints, I, was the LRH Personal Public Relations Officer International for a while, even though L. Ron Hubbard was dead. And at some point, I was the commanding officer of the CMO. I was the chairman of the Watchdog Committee. I was all of these different things. But one thing that was pretty constant throughout everything was I had, with Lyman Spurlock, reorganized the corporate structure of Scientology. And in doing so, had created the Church of Scientology International and all the other churches that you see around the world today. And I was on the original board of directors of the Church of Scientology International.
Okay, so stop there for a second. Is that at the point where every entity was a separate one, so you couldn't sue Scientology and go against everybody? Was that the nut of what you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That and created the corporate structure of Religious Technology Center and the Church of Spiritual Technology and the interrelationship between them.
Well, okay, could we talk about that just for a second? Because I've referred to CST and RTC. And if you could just, briefly differentiate how they operate and what would be the reason for this, the underlying reason, the truth, not the short story, you know?
Okay. The underlying reason was Hubbard wanted a structure that was, in his mind or in his view, self-policing. So there are these three entities at the top of Scientology that have different functions and different responsibilities. There's the Church of Scientology International, which really runs the Scientology hierarchy internationally. There is Religious Technology Center, which is responsible for, quote, maintaining the purity of the technology. And they own the trademarks to Dianetics and Scientology. And that is an enforcement tool to be able to ensure the purity is retained.
Right.
Church of Spiritual Technology owns the copyrights of everything that L. Ron Hubbard ever did. And they perform no function other than preserving the technology of L. Ron Hubbard and ultimately being able to withdraw the approval for anybody to use Hubbard technology, including RTC or CSI. So each of these have an and the one thing that CSI has that the other two don't have is that in order to be on the board or in an executive position in RTC or in CST, you must be in good standing as a Scientologist. Your status in good standing as a Scientologist comes from the Church of Scientology International.
Wow.
Which is the International Justice Chief. So in theory, if Church of Scientology International goes off the rails, either RTC or CSI can take away the license agreement for them to be able to use the copyrights and the trademarks. If RTC goes off the rails, CST is supposed to be able to take away their agreement that they can use and police the marks and copyrights. And if CST goes off the rails, CSI is supposed to be able to say, you're no longer in good standing with the mother church, so you're out.
I'll tell you, just firsthand, this is a pretty goddamn good idea.
It was a great theory. The problem with it is that what overlays everything about CST, RTC, and CSI is the Sea Organization and the authority of Sea Org officers and the authority of people who proclaim to be the ones that have the communication line to L. Ron Hubbard. And that's what Dave did. So nobody is going to second guess Dave, chairman of the board, which is a made-up title anyway.
Yeah.
Dave, the captain, the blah blah, the guy that had the line, the person supposedly appointed by L. Ron Hubbard. So when Dave says, Russ Bellin, the head of CST, you're an out ethics motherfucker, and I'm sending people up, and you're coming to the hole, Russ Bellin shows up in the hole.
Wow.
Now, Russ Bellin should have been the person that was actually policing Dave and saying, you know, RTC is really off the rails. CSI is really off the rails. I'm canceling all agreements and withdrawing your rights to use any of the materials of Dianetics and Scientology.
Now, that's true. But then who would enforce that?
Well, there is
nobody. Nobody.
No, it could be enforced legally if CST had gotten a hold of lawyers who represented CST. But the lawyers who represent all of these entities and oversee their well-being, et cetera, are headed by Monique Yingling.
By who?
Monique Yingling. Monique Yingling oversees all of this. And she's Dave's girl.
Absolutely. I mean,
so she is the Dave getting Monique Yingling and her husband before he died, Jerry Pfeffer, on board with him was the biggest thing that allowed him to then subvert all the rest of this setup that had been put in place by Hubbard to ensure that nobody became the dictator of Scientology.
Except him.
Yeah. But he knew, see, this is what's interesting. Dave was involved in all the planning. He knew what all the advices were. He knew what Hubbard had laid out to be set up and how it was to be set up. He knew, like, whether you like David or not, whether you think he's a sociopath or not, there is nobody that has ever met the guy that doesn't know he's super fucking smart.
Yeah,
He is a super intelligent guy.
I know that. I'll tell you this, I've said it many times. If he hadn't gotten involved in Scientology and he just grew up as, well, quote, normal, unquote, you know, and entered some business, he could have risen to the top of just anything he attempted to do. That's my opinion.
No, I share that opinion. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And while we're on the subject, there's something else I want to say, Ronnie, that I got reminded of this week, just in this whole subject. Hubbard laid out all of these things in the corporate planning. And this was done in 1982 and the end of 1982 and into early 1983. Hubbard didn't die until 1986. The most startling omission in the life of L. Ron Hubbard is that there was no direct message from him at the end of his life. Just think about this.
Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard wrote Ron's journals. He wrote thousands of pages of policies and bulletins and advices and flag orders. He recorded thousands of lectures, and he recorded tons of stuff that nobody has ever even heard that was just directed to people internally. He was considered and figured that he had mastered the art of communication. I mean, that's what Scientology is sold as, you know, learn how to communicate.
Yeah.
And the very fact that at the end of his life, he did not record a Ron's journal, and particularly a videoed one, to say, okay, I've reached the highest levels of operating Phaeton that I can attain, and I'm moving on, and I'm in great health, but I just don't have I don't have the capacity now to continue doing my research, and I'm leaving Scientology in the good hands of Pat and Annie Broca, or Dave Miscavige, or Mark Yeager, or the Watchdog Committee, or Church of Scientology, International, or whatever, is the absolute best proof that at the end of his life, he was just a fucked up mess.
Yeah.
Because he wrote instructions for everything.
Yeah.
And detailed, ridiculously microcosmic detail about what had to be done and how it had to be done and who had to do it.
Yeah.
For everything except who was supposed to run Scientology once he left.
Right.
And, you know, there is this concoction now that Dave has tried to put together of saying, well, Ron said blah, taking a statement from a Ron's journal about Portland and taking statements from the affidavit that was filed in the lawsuit that Ron DeWolf, his Hubbard's son, brought in Riverside County.
Yeah.
But you know, Ron, that affidavit that is quoted from, that Hubbard signed with that special pen and dated ink and all that shit, you know that affidavit was written by Dave.
Yeah. You know, I suspected that up till this point, but didn't hear it from a person who absolutely...
Well, Dave and the two lawyers that were, quote, the ex-attorneys, Larry Heller and I can't even remember the other. Oh, Sherman Lentz. They put that together to solve the problem in the lawsuit of Hubbard wasn't showing up and how could they prove that he wasn't dead. So they had to almost say, look, the people that are here standing on my behalf, I trust them. Because otherwise the judge would have looked at it and gone, how do I know that he really even, he may have written it, but how do I know that you're appropriately representing him? So that is now become, you see, L. Ron Hubbard on his deathbed said that Dave was the person that he trusted and Scientology should be in his hands. Never said it.
Well,
in fact, do you know that Dave never went to Creston until after Hubbard died?
Yeah.
Ray Midoff went there. Pat and Annie Broker were there. Steve Fouth was there. But not Dave. He was not there. He was not summoned by Hubbard like Ray Midoff was, or like anybody else was. He was not in that picture at all at that time.
wow. No, I'll tell you, you are making the point of points, because if he had done that, well, we'd still be in the soup today, because let's face it, we're talking about promises that he made that could never be delivered, possibly. So regardless of, who took over the helm, they couldn't have delivered, exteriorization with full perception. But the point about David not being named is the point of points, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it's because it's something that's not there, it's easy to overlook.
Right. That's very true. And that's a hell of a point, because you're not going to discover what's missing if you don't know what should have been there.
Correct.
And it's not there.
Exactly. So people don't like even Scientologists, like, it doesn't strike them as odd at all that the announcement of L. Ron Hubbard's death came from two people, that Dave and Pat Broca, and Earl Cooley, a lawyer who wasn't even a Scientologist, rather than some statement from Hubbard himself. And the statement that they made was, and he causatively moved off his, departed his body. He was in great shape. He was working on his OT research of advanced OT levels to OT level 25, blah, blah, blah. But, oh gosh, he forgot. He didn't write a message to you, or he didn't record one, didn't have a video camera available, blah, 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 blah. Huh?
Yeah, well, he causatively moved off with the aid of a stroke. You know what I mean?
Well, several strokes, actually. That was just the last one.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. What a mess, huh?
Yeah, total mess. Anyway, I diverted from what we were talking about, which was spokesperson, because as the head of the Office of Special Affairs, I was over all of the international public relations for Scientology and interactions with the media. And what would typically happen is Heber, who was the president, and that meant he was the main front man and the spokesperson,
right,
would routinely do and say things that got him in trouble with Dave. And Heber, I love Heber to death. I mean, I've been to hell and back with Heber many, many times. I gotta say it over and over. He is someone that is just an incredibly affable, personable, enjoyable guy to be around.
Yeah.
But he's not the smartest tool in the shed.
Well, no, I personally share that opinion, because Heber and I just we hit it off instantly, and we were always good buddies. But I guess many people could say the same thing as I just said. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But he would get himself in trouble because he would say things that he wasn't supposed to say.
Yeah.
So when Heber was in trouble, I would always be blamed for it, and then I'd be told, "Well, you better go do it better." So that sort of started me interacting a lot with the media and becoming sort of the spokesperson, that because eventually Miscavige decided, oh, I shouldn't really say that. I should say Dave Like I feel bad when I say that. I'm sitting here talking.
Because you're involving me, right?
Exactly. Eventually, Dave decided that Hebel was no longer going to be doing public media interaction at all. So I then became it. And oddly, all the way till the end, that was a function, no matter where I was. Even when I was in the hole, I would get taken out of the hole by Dave to go handle the media or go handle a legal problem. And Scientology says today, like they say about you and about the Headleys and about everybody else who's ever escaped the lunatic asylum of the Int base, that we were booted out.
Yep.
We got rid of those guys because they couldn't live up to the ethical standards, the high ethical standards that we maintain.
Oh, and that was the real reason that I led the band at Tom Cruise's birthday party on the ship.
Yes.
Because I was no goddamn good at all from the word go, and I was never any good.
Yeah. And in my case, when I left in London, and I was in London dealing with the BBC. When I left in London, I was on the board of directors of Church of Scientology International, and I was in London as the international spokesperson of Scientology.
Right.
And they claim I was a nobody, that I had been removed from all positions of authority, and that I was thrown out for my unwillingness to comply with the ethical standards of Scientology. That's the new history of Mike Rinder's departure from Scientology.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And that would be the equivalent of a write-up being in this newspaper the Russians had called Pravda, which was literally translated to the word the truth. And all the paper was lies. Anyway.
Right. So there is the short arc of my history.
Very, very interesting. And you filled in you connect all the dots for me, and I hope for a lot of other people out there. And now, just getting back to this just for 1 second. The OSA had priorities. Would you set those priorities, or was that Dave's order to you to set them?
Pretty much Dave's direction. I mean, Dave is a micromanager.
Yeah.
You know that. And particularly when it comes to things that affect him directly, and legal cases and media definitely affected him. So he was, I had to report every single morning exactly what had happened the day before, what had happened on every major legal case, what had happened on any media interactions every single day to him.
Well, that makes sense to me, but I just wanted to get that answer on the air. Okay, so now, your treatment of when you were doing this, did that come up all of a sudden toward the end, or was this like a dwindling spiral when you were doing that job?
My treatment?
Yeah, how were you treated as an individual, as a spokesman? Like before an event, were you catered to so you'd be in a good mood, or were you pounded to not fuck up? I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. Listen, I used to be at those events.
I know. So I know that's a staged question. Oh, yeah.
I know. I used to see you guys in a room because I was downstairs, because the band was downstairs in the areas. And in the green room, there was just you and maybe Mark Yeager and Guillaume. And I could look in there, and there would be like an air of despair and fear coming out of the door, because you knew no matter what, where you did good or fucked up, you're going to get it in the neck, right?
Exactly. Like, I have absolutely no fear of speaking in front of large audiences, because that was the least problem that I had at those events.
Right.
The fear of speaking in front of the audience was the least problem. It was what was going on backstage, the notes being taken about, you stumbled here, you did this, you said that fucking wrong, you didn't laugh right, you looked down, you didn't look up, you weren't like blah 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 blah, like endless. Oh my God, I mean, you were there for some of the rehearsals, Ronnie.
Yeah, of course,
I mean,
yeah.
it was brutal. It was fucking brutal. And that was because there was no audience there at all. So it was like just a free for all. I know Mick Sturgeon. Mick Sturgeon told me, Mick Sturgeon was a non-Scientology mixer who is a wonderful guy and a wonderful friend of mine to this day. And he told me, he said, Mike, he said, I don't know how you guys manage to continue on doing this. Like, it was painful just watching, because he was one of the few people that was in the room because he was sitting at the mix board.
Right. I remember that.
And it really upset him.
Yeah.
Like, it was upsetting. Like, he quit. He quit because of it.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't a pleasant experience at all. But as they say, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it certainly, I don't know, that expression has two sides to it. Because it inures you to things that might upset like normal people.
Yeah.
And so that you're unflappable in some respects.
Oh,
it also hardens you.
Yeah.
What doesn't kill you makes you harder too. It destroys some degree of empathy for others, because you look at others and you go, why are they such wimps? I can put up with this shit. Why are they so wimpy?
Yeah, you're right.
And so it has like that both sides of the equation. Is not all bad, but it's certainly not all good.
Mike, I can remember going into a staff meeting where I knew that if Dave showed up, we're going to get nailed to the wall verbally. And I developed the attitude, I don't care what happens. I don't give a shit about anything. And that is how I was able to tolerate it.
Yeah, I know. And that I see, I'm infamous for that. And, you know, I'm the start of the pie face.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
That was another one.
The pie face. Because that was sort of my handling for this, was to just stand and go,
okay.
Yep,
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I remember the pie face, and it was a face that had no emotion on it.
A paper plate that looked like this. It had a drawing on it, Roddy, but everybody had to hold it. In the end, everybody had to hold it in front of their faces.
Right.
At PDC meetings, and it had a drawing on it with eye holes cut that looked like that.
Well, I don't know if can you see that there? Sean,
I don't know if you can see it or not.
Hold it up. Hold it up.
It's up.
But you got to say something so you'd come on the screen. Go on. Say something, Mike, so you're on the screen.
Oh, I have to speak so you can see it. Can you see it now?
Yeah, yeah.
Or is the pencil too thin and you can't really see it?
I think that's enough to get the
Anyway,
idea.
it's just, it was stupid. That was pie face because of this no reaction.
Yep.
Anyway.
And if you reacted, no matter how you reacted, you were wronged.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, people ask me often, well, what did you do? What did you do that got you in the hole? What did you do that got you in the bilges? What did you do? I'm like, if you ask me what did I have done that caused some, disaster to befall me in the serialization with Dave, I couldn't ever tell you. I couldn't remember at all.
Well, I believe you, because that is the way it was. And you could not say the right thing. No matter what the answer was, it would be wrong. So
Right.
you'd stand there with the pie face, not saying anything. And then that was worse yet. You'd get in more trouble because of that.
Exactly. Yeah, it was definitely a no-win.
Okay, you know what? We're coming up to that witching hour. God damn it. Well, I'm not complaining because I'll tell you what you're doing is really filling in a lot of the spaces and connecting a lot of dots for our viewers and me personally. Okay,
That's
so
good.
I'm going to have to lean on you and say you got to come back. I'm not going to ask you to come back because we have 2 more subjects I want to take up and they're very important, but I can't short shrift them because we only have a few more minutes left. And those were the tax exemption, how we got it. You were going to go into that, and also the disconnection that goes on, which is the most toxic policy that anybody could put on a person. Okay.
Yes.
So,
well, won't be next week, Ronnie.
Pardon me?
Next week. I'm going on a cruise with the Headleys and the Smith-Levins.
Right. That I knew. So that put you out of the box for a couple of weeks. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk later as to when you could do it. But for our listeners, we definitely will have Mike back. And believe me, you've got to tune in for this because as much as interest you had in this, your interest is going to continue because you will be enlightened further. My producer is trying to get my attention. Go on.
Yeah, we just had some quick comments if you guys had time. So
go ahead.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rami Ruhael says, "Go Ron, love your work, keep it up." For $15. Thank you, Rami.
Yeah, thank you very much from me.
Some good questions in here. Jamie Sider for $20 says, "Love your show, Ron, but I have a question for Mike. Mike, you have such a fascinating story and a swath of fans who love you, including me. Do you plan on writing a book about your life in and out of Scientology?"
Well, I plan on it, but getting it done is rather difficult. And the biggest problem I have with writing a book is what not to include.
Okay.
Seriously. I don't know. It's like I started putting together like an outline of events in my life, and it would be like 2,000 pages or something. So I have to figure out how to hone it down and what is important and what isn't. And I have these fears that if I leave things out, people are going to go, "Oh, you never didn't mention this." But if I put everything in, it's going to be so long that nobody will want to read it, and etc. Anyway, eventually, yes.
Good. There you go. There's your answer.
Steve Britton for $14 says, "Many ex-Scientologists that we see on your show and other shows appear to be highly successful people. How many people who leave Scientology spend the rest of their lives struggling to recover?"
I don't know of any. How about you, Mike?
I don't know of any that struggle, but I think that there are people who go through the rest of their lives continuing to suffer from the damage.
That is true.
It has profound effects on their abilities to, like, they may be successful financially or not struggle to find a roof over their head, but that doesn't mean that they're come out of or recovered from the damage that was caused to them, and that they're really happy.
No, that I totally agree with, because most people who leave are the people who have the gumption to say, "You know what, fuck this, I'm done." And it's a matter of self-determinism that gets you out of there. And I do know of at least 2 people who went on the streets for a while, came out of it and become tremendously successful, but still have bad dreams almost daily or weekly. And that is the degree of being treated that way.
Ronnie, I haven't met anybody who's left the Sea Org. Let's keep it at the Sea Org, who has not had bad dreams for years about going back into the Sea Org. I mean, my recurring nightmare, and it has gotten less and less and less over time, but for a while it was like 2 or 3 times a week, was that I'm back at INT.
Mike, I agree. And I still have it, but it's not as frequent as it used to be. That is my greatest fear. I'm in a dream and I'm there and I'm thinking, how am I going to get out? And there was actually sometimes I actually thought to myself, wait a minute, I'm fucking dreaming. And I would wake myself up and look around and feel so relieved.
Me too.
Yeah.
And everybody I've spoken to has that same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's good. Emily Mice for $10 says, love you both. You're proof that it's never too late to begin again. Keep up the great work you're doing and raising awareness about this horrible cult. Sending many blessings your way.
And I thank you very much for your kind words. That's very nice of you.
And Slyna, she actually did 2 comments for $2. I want to help. I feel for you all so much. Thank you for spreading your word. And I think we had one more.
Well, to that person, well, I say, if you want to help, get more people to subscribe to this podcast so we can increase our viewership. I would like to have this be 10 times as big and create more and more listeners to be enlightened by this.
Yeah, and Prairie Farm Girls, the last one, for $21. Thank you. All the best to both of you gentlemen. Thank you for showing us the truth and keep on fighting.
And I thank you very much for that. And for all of you who are listening, become a patron, help us in our endeavor, and it will be very much appreciated. And Mike, as always, you're a brilliant person. I gotta say that. And you helped me to understand some of the things that I didn't have all the loose ends tied up, and you did that for me. And I want to thank you from our audience, even though they wouldn't be here to thank you. But I want to thank you from them. Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
And I will have you on again and just watch the news. And when Mike has done his cruise, I'm going to lasso him again so he can continue on with this, and very much appreciate it. So I am Ron Miscavige. This is Life After Scientology. See you on the next episode.
I just wanted to add one thing quick, Ron. We are going to do a Patreon hangout for all the patrons at some point. So just anyone that's a patron, just stay tuned to your email. We'll be sending out a message where we do kind of like a one-on-one with Ron. So
good. Okay, so that's coming up. And again, see you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.